U.S. administrations in recent years have struggled to counter China's growing global role. So what is this administration's strategy when it comes to pivoting to Asia? We talked about it with Ken Weinstein. He's the Japan chair at the Hudson Institute. He was also President Trump's pick to be ambassador to Japan in 2020. Weinstein also touched on Indonesia and the possibility that that country, Muslim majority, might join the Abraham Accords.
Look, the pivot to the Indo-Pacific has been going on for a long time. It was Barack Obama who pivoted from Iraq to Afghanistan and allegedly to the Indo-Pacific, but all that did in his term was to send a few dozen Marines to Darwin Island in Australia. The real pivot to the Indo-Pacific began much more deeply in President Trump's first term. It was a recognition of the geostrategic challenge China presented. It was a deeper recognition that somehow the American foreign policy and foreign economic policy with regard to China, which sought to bring China into the World Trading Organization, promoting Chinese economic growth, that would lead somehow to liberalization in China. And instead what we saw was the rise of China 2025, China trying, the state-run project trying to allow China to dominate areas of high technology, from biotechnology to green energy to AI, quantum, and the like. And so Trump called an end to the China delusion that we were going to somehow transform China by bringing it into the modern world and recognize this. And so that was, to me, the real beginning of the pivot. And then the question became, what can we do? And he pressed hard for the Japanese, who were critical in any kind of a contingency involving China, given Japan's proximity to China, given the fact, as I mentioned earlier, more than 50,000 U.S. troops are based throughout Japan, given that we have numerous Marine, Air Force, naval bases, Army bases in Japan, and given Japan's proximity both to North Korea and to Taiwan. Japan is absolutely central to anything that goes on. And Japan's troops, South Korea's troops are important to us, but really only in the case of a North Korea contingency. South Korean Army is not prepared to engage in a Taiwan contingency. They're not focused at all on a Taiwan contingency. They are completely focused on trying to meet the massive conventional threat posed by the North Korean Army, as well as the massive nuclear threat, the growing nuclear threat posed by North Korea. So this is why Japan is so critical to us. And Japan is also a leader in high technology, a leader in manufacturing, and sits on huge amounts of financial capital that it can invest and use for defense and security purposes. So this is why Japan is so important to us. The Japanese have and it was Prime Minister Kishida Ishiba's predecessor who said, what can happen in Ukraine can also happen in the Indo-Pacific. And so the sense for the Japanese is that no one is watching Ukraine more closely than Xi Jinping, and that if the U.S. shows weakness with regard to Ukraine and the West shows weakness, that this will embolden Xi Jinping to take action in Taiwan. Indonesia is a remarkable country. I was there in September. It is a country that has a very moderate form of Islam around the Nahdlatul Ulama, which is a civil society organization, which is the largest Muslim organization in the world, that professes a tolerant form of Islam that is radically different from either the Wahhabist Islam that was practiced in Saudi Arabia for many years, or the Muslim Brotherhood Islam that comes out of Qatar, that has influenced Hamas, that has influenced Turkey. And the Indonesians have been quite remarkable in their opening to Israel. They are seeking to enter the organization, the OECD, and as they do that, I was there at the Shangri-La Dialogue in May in Singapore, which the Indonesian defense minister said that Israel had the right to defend itself against Hamas's attack, which was a first, and it was a sign of this backdoor diplomacy between the two countries, whereby Israel will not block Indonesia's admission to the OECD in exchange for Indonesia showing greater openness to Israel and being open to greater cooperation. So I am optimistic that over time Indonesia will be interested in joining the Abraham Accords, and will reap the benefit of a stronger relationship with Israel. Indonesia is a tolerant, pluralist society with lots of Hindus as well in places like Bali. So it's a remarkable, tolerant society. It's radically different from Malaysia, and what we hear out of Malaysia is very hardline rhetoric on Israel and on Islam, and hardline rhetoric to me that is frankly anti-Semitic. And they're very different countries and have very different Islamic traditions. Let me also add, on the Abraham Accord side, there's some in South Korea. I am not in agreement with this school who see the example of the Abraham Accords as the example for the Korean Peninsula, where they think that someday there can be a diplomatic opening to North Korea to convince the North Koreans, no time soon, that they should be open, that they should engage in commerce with South Korea, that both commerce and regular interaction will change the way that the two countries view each other. To me, I don't see that. I like the appeal of the concept to say here's a future path for North Korea. I don't believe it. But then again, I was a student in Munich in the spring of 1989, and I think it was either April or May of 1989. I attended a lecture in Munich by a very, very famous German historian who said, it's time to change the preamble to the German Constitution. No one believes that the two Germanys will ever be reunified, that it undermines confidence in our Constitution to talk about reunification in this way. And so I'm going to propose a constitutional amendment to change the preamble. And as we all know, the Berlin Wall fell on November 9th, and Germany was reunified within a year or so of that comment by that noted German constitutional scholar. And there were about 400 people in that audience applauding his remarks about giving up on the hope of reunification, and we saw it happen within the year. So history can change very quickly. It can change in either direction, and so we have to keep a very tight eye on what the North Koreans are doing.
In Washington, Shayna Estulin for TvAbraham.